This is the fourth talk in the series of events that focus on work in the exhibition Forever Changes, which includes bodies of work from several artists from the various Nordic nations, all dealing with topics of climate change and the environment, and all in very diverse and different ways. So that includes artists from Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and indeed from Scotland. It's been undertaken in partnership with the Nordic embassies with representation in the UK and with the Finnish Institute in the UK and Ireland. It was programmed to coincide with the UN Climate Change Summit, COP26, in early November of 2021. And our intention there is keeping a focus on those themes and through these talks, keeping the conversation going, because certainly the issues are not going away. Another purpose, of course, for us at street level is to become more familiar with some fantastic work from artists from the various Nordic countries that previously we may not knew much about, but also to make contact with organisations in those Nordic countries in order to extend the reach and indeed future collaborations, we hope. We'll hear from a special guest a bit later on in the event from Norway in that respect. But tonight's artist spot is with Christian Houge. Christian, if you would like to reveal yourself to us.
Hey.
Good evening.
Hello, Malcolm. Hey, good evening.
Christian, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And you're in Oslo, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. I'm just going to run through a brief introduction to you, Christian, before we get into the main substance of tonight, and which is hearing from you and you sharing some insights into your work. You've exhibited and undertaken projects in your native Norway as well as internationally in China, France, USA, England, and now in part in Scotland, which is a privilege for us. Your series, Residence of Impermanence, has been exhibited at several venues, including a solo show at Fotografiska in Stockholm and Le Rencontre d'Art in France. Death of a Mountain received a Norwegian Arts Council grant and was nominated for the Leica Oscar Bernard Award in 2021, so very recently. Your large body of work, Paradise Lost, contains 3 sequences of work on the environment, and that's toured 3 large museums in China, including our friends at Three Shadows Photography Art Centre that we know very well in Beijing. It'll also be shown next month in a solo exhibition at Balder Gallery in Oslo and at the House of Photography in Rotterdam. And that's with the support of the Norwegian Embassy. And also with the support of the Embassy, you have a solo show at Bold Gallery in Prague. Death of a Mountain, which is the work which is within Forever Changes exhibition, also features in an upcoming show at Hosfeld Gallery in San Francisco later this year. Very recently, again, you were awarded the prestigious biannual photography prize for your 20 years of practice in exploring the relationship and the conflict between nature and culture. So it's all kind of happening for you, Christian, I hope, and that's hardly surprising because you take a long-form approach in terms of your work, often working many years in each body of work. And having done that, you say that new worlds still open up to you. And I think that your work has certainly opened up a wider awareness for us in terms of the fragility of nature and our place within it. And I think that's something that you're going to share with us now. So as I say, it's a great privilege to have you here and to have you speak in person about this. So I'm going to pass the floor over to you now, Christian, to run through some of your work for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. And again, thank you so much for having me. It really means a lot to be in the company of so many talented artists, really exploring this with heart and interest from so many angles. And I think that's what we really need to raise new questions as environmental issues really just grow exponentially, and show how art and documentary really can ask new questions. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. So I'll start with the series Death of a Mountain, which is from Switzerland. I started this in 2016, and I've been mesmerized and obsessed ever since, like I often get with my series. So before I show my photography, I'd like to show just the area I've been working with. The actual glacier is actually behind all of this this mass, this ancient giant, because this is all gone. And this was drawn up by the Swiss Alpine Club in 1824, where the glacier actually came all the way down to a small village called Glech in the Alps. All of this is obviously gone now. And here you also have a survey. Here you have a survey from 1876, where you see how the glacier has receded in a very dramatic way. So my project is actually just all the way on the top where you see the straight line. So I'm going to start with a small introduction also before I start showing my work. It's a behind the scenes film. If we can show that, John, would be amazing. Okay, we have sound. So that was a very quick behind the scenes film, just to show the area, because it's this is part of the Rhone glacier, and they've taken quite a large piece of this and wrapped it in a UV resistant, UV protective cloth or tarp to protect the ice from melting, or at least to halt the process somewhat by, I think, 60–70%. So when I saw this, I was just very taken aback. It's in many ways very beautiful and dystopic, and I just had to find out more. So I started coming to the glacier in summer, in winter. I was there every year, really trying to find new angles. And it's actually almost like making a portrait, even though it kind of stands still, but each time you come back, it's changed. So it's not the safest area to work when you're on top of the glacier, because you can't see the the big ravines or cracks, which can be several meters. And there's obviously a cloth over it. So it's a bit tricky, and I'm working with a very large format, as you saw. It's a 617 centimeter analog camera, which is quite technical. So this process is also very important for me because it becomes very meditative. I'm glad that I can't see the images right away. I have to come back and develop and really see this with new eyes. And as a perfectionist, I, of course, have to come back and make it even better for me. If I can come back with 2 or 3 images from one trip, I'm very happy. So it's an ongoing process and a relationship to this ancient giant, which I've become very fond of because each time I'm there, I really do feel hope. I feel desperation. I feel a sense of loss. I see visual beauty. All of these things at the same time kind of make up a kind of cognitive dissonance and a juxtaposition, which I hope to be able to relay in my photography. So here is not exactly an overview, but this is the most overview you can get because this is obviously not a documentary. I've wanted to make images which are also quite abstract. Here you can see part of the blue ice all the way in the back. And I like to work with personal references to open up for those from the viewers. And people see very many different things in this kind of humanizing a part of nature. We have so much information from the news, we get a little bit jaded with all the catastrophes and data. So really my wish is to humanize this part of a specific glacier so that we can maybe feel more responsibility or see a bigger picture. And also a lot of these tarps, they rip up in the summertime. So each year, glaciologists with special equipment have to climb around on these large faces of ice to put new UV protective cloth on. And I think in many ways it's so beautiful. It's almost sensual also, how you can see parts of the ice some places. And I like the fact that some of it could look like marble. It can look like a war-torn ruin of a refugee camp, or maybe a death veil or something you would put on furniture when you're going away for a long time. So in many ways, I feel it's very comforting. There's a very feminine quality in actually wrapping and taking care of this, almost bandaging this piece of ice, which has been there for 10, 15,000 years. And also a landscape and a mountain that we've always had a reference to in landscape, which will for sure be gone within 80 years, maybe shorter if climate change in the Anthropocene keeps growing as it is. Another thing which really just is for me mind-boggling is the reference to the artist Christo, who died just recently, and especially his project called Wrapped Coastline in Australia from 1969. And he would wrap, as many of you know, monuments, but here it was actually eroding shoreline, with a lot of the participants who helped bring immense amount of cloth to decontextualize and defamiliarize, like he did with everything. So you're actually seeing shapes without seeing them directly. And through that, you may get a new idea of what it is, what's going on. And in this case, obviously the severity of the situation. The 617 format is, well, there are a lot of things that can go wrong, of course, and I love the proportions of this. We actually see very often in 617, or at least in panoramic, and that's why it's so comfortable being at the cinema, because that is actually our eyesight. I will miss a lot of compositions, but then again, there are some compositions which just couldn't be in any other format. And then there's of course waiting for the light and being in the right place, going through this maze of where you can walk and not walk, which is really time consuming. So I've wanted to also work with the inner and the outer reference of this. So what you're actually seeing is a tunnel, which is now melting naturally with the shapes that you see. The irony of this is they've been wrapping this glacier for almost 150 years, and the family who runs this program with the glaciologists, they're also wrapping it because they want tourists to be inside of the glacier and walk through these tunnels. So it's kind of a predicament in itself, I think. But I wanted to work with this inner beauty. First, I thought it was actually too visually beautiful to work with. So it was actually first on my third trip that I started making photographs from the inside. But it is definitely a juxtaposition. And what you see, which looks like finally like life, is actually the depth of the mountain. And of course, these more abstract shapes and compositions where you still see some parts of this ice. And I like the contrast of both hope and loss, of even beauty. Well, personally, I see beauty in this, but also decay, together with this inner-outer reference. So if we can play the next video, John. The video coming up now is made with drones, together with a drone pilot called Louis Rosenthal, who I've had a very close collaboration with. The quality isn't too good, but that's okay. The black part you see is actually polluted ice. And the white part, which should be ice, is actually this tarp protecting the ice. And I love this. Well, to me, it's kind of a dystopic, futuristic feeling. And where you have openings in the tarp, it can remind very much of some kind of wounds with bandages, like you see here. And also, again, the sense of scale is very difficult to understand. So it opens new possibilities also for the viewer. The reason it's twisted is because of the summer storms are so strong up in these mountains that they lift this very, very heavy tarp, which is made from glaciologists putting new tarps on. This is used as a separate film room in the exhibitions I have, and I think it works quite well using moving images together with the stills. This is the glacial lake just under the the ice, just beneath the ice. This is polluted ice. And then you have the tarp. I think it's also interesting to hear from viewers what they see, and everything that arises in them with their own personal references. So I really do learn a lot from viewers, and that is also an important part of the project. Okay, I think we're going to cut it there, John. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to the panoramic images. And again, this enormous tarp here, you can actually see the drops of this glacier melting. And I just love the texture and the feel of this, which is very much kind of marble-like. This is in the winter, and all this will change if you're away for half a year. This will look completely different, which is of course always exciting to see. Here you see the mountain in the back. And it can sometimes look like, well, one thing is humanizing this glacier and a part of nature, but some of it also looks like, it could be wet bodies with sheets over, or a torso or a back. And there's a safety line in red that you see just over. So this image is from street level photography, PhotoWorks, with 66 by 200 centimeter images. And I think it's set up very well. And now I'm over on Buer Gallery in Oslo. This was from May 2021, where I had a solo show with Death of a Mountain and another series called Inhuman Nature. And I'd like to link those two when it comes to glaciers, because I've always had a fascination with glaciers. I grew up with a very famous Norwegian glacier, kind of national romantic glacier called Svartisen in the north of Norway. And I've been back many times since I was a child, and it's unrecognizable because the whole tongue of the glacier is actually gone. So I decided to learn ice climbing, which is really scary. I'm still not very good at it. It's very dramatic, but I learned this so that I could photograph more of the inside of Svartisen. So what I did is I took these images and I put them into a wireframe so that I could draw with acrylics, draw the same glacier onto original NASA images, quite rare images which I've bought on auctions. So my idea with this is really using an image which is not mine, of course. It's from the moon, from 1969. It's a landscape that can look very much like my own references to landscape in Norway. And then I've interpolated these landscapes and hand-drawn these acrylic lines. And the fact that it's topographical means also that it's already, this landscape is already conquered. It's mapped out. I think that really comes out in a lot of my series about this conquering of nature. both with the animals and the death of a mountain, and also this. I've been using pigments also for many of these images. And I think it works quite well. So it's very natural for me to not just work with photography, but also with film and installation and these paintings. This is another example. It's from Bomullsfabrikken, Kunsthall in Arendal in Norway. There was a large exhibition there with 82 artists who have been, their work has been bought for a research vessel, which will be finished in a few years, called the Rhone. Environmental research, of course, and focus on the sea. Very high tech. There will be 30 scientists on board at all times, and this art will be on the wall together with Thale, actually, who's with us today. So congratulations, Thale. It's been a really interesting project. So I want to say also these crosses on the NASA images, which are all NASA images, is also a conquering of nature. It is a mapping of the nature on the actual photograph, which I think is interesting. And of course, as many art historians would maybe reference to, Caspar David Friedrich, with this man looking over the landscape, which is a very romantic painting. But at the same time, if you look at his stance, that is also a conquering of nature. It's not as romantic and clean as it seems to be. The image you see here is it's a triptych. It's about 5 meters. And then I want to go over to show you some of my Arctic work. There's an island called Spitsbergen, which is Norwegian. There is also a Russian coal mining community on this small island, and it's kind of the last stop before the North Pole. So I was there for the first time in the year 2000, and again, I couldn't believe it could be real, and I had to come back with the same camera, and I became obsessed in coming back and really understanding, trying to understand my own fascination. These installations represent man's search, which has very often been outwardly, and it's juxtaposed in this very much primal landscape, at least the most primal landscape I've been in. You get around with snow scooters. You have to have pistols and flares and rifles, or at least one rifle with you, because of polar bears around. And the funny thing is, I've wanted to make these on very long exposures. So night becomes day, and you can see that in the lighting here. So many of these exposures are on 12 hours, which is, you have to just stay there. You can't move around either because of the snow and the tripod. So you're put into this very meditative mode. And it's also very technical. You have to put up the focus, of course, before it gets dark, and then let the moonlight do its thing. So all of what you see is actually painted by the moonlight. So this search, this outwardly search, has fascinated me, and man's installations, and also the consequences, the visual consequences of our search. This is an antenna field, which is in collaboration with the University of Tromsø, and it's not manipulated at all. And I think it's just stunning. This antenna field, they say, is made to measure temperature and pressure in the atmosphere. And Svalbard has been known to have the cleanest atmosphere on Earth. That's not true anymore because, well, Ny-Ålesund, which had the cleanest, I heard a few years ago, has had pollution also. This is again a very long exposure, over 10 hours. NASA rents these also. They're used for mapping, well, the effects of climate change. So they're very helpful. At the same time, they're also used for, well, they can be used for surveillance. So all of these landscape images look very romantic. This is Ny-Ålesund, which is really restricted area, very difficult to get to. So since I like to work with contrasts and juxtapositions, I wanted to take this further. So I've been working on 2 trips in the summertime, looking at the same installations, but not from the same kind of romantic view, but both for communication and research. This is how some of the antennas are kind of just shored to the ground with a lot of tension. This is just underneath one of the antennas. And suddenly they become almost threatening in some way. And what I wanted to mention earlier was the title Paradise Lost, which is really a poem by John Milton. And it's revolving around Adam and Eve and this famous apple, which Eve bit into. And I think technology can really represent that in our Paradise Lost. So how technology can be a Faustian bargain. It's in many ways a double-edged sword. It giveth and it taketh away. And we have to be really careful in our so-called progress to not mess it up, because this technology, I mean, just since the birth of internet, how everything has really grown exponentially, and it can also go out of control. We also need more metals for this technology. We need more resources, and we're not balancing this out. And as Albert Einstein said, if you look deep enough in nature, you will find all the answers. So we have a tendency to really look outwardly, but I think it's also important to look inwardly, both in nature and in ourselves, and see how much we are a part of this. Beyond our egos, we are a part of something so beautiful and so powerful. But this conquering of nature and egos make us think that nature is really more nice to have, not need to have. And I think that's very interesting. So again, another contrast to these antennas, which are very searching outwardly, is the global seed vault. The global seed vault is one of many around the world. This one was created, I think, in 2008, designed by Snøhetta architects. This is the actual entrance, and I just think it's so stunning. It's a reference to concrete brutalism, which also has been part of developing our modern world. And then you have this pristine, untouched wave of snow against that. So the global seed vault is very difficult to access. You have to speak to a lot of people in these small time slots where they're putting seeds inside. The seed vault is the safest in the world. There are, as I said, many seed vaults around on the planet, but many of them have been destroyed by ironically enough, by climate change and natural disasters and terrorism. So just the fact that we need global seed vaults, I think, is fascinating. This one is called the Doomsday Vault, but it's also called Noah's Ark. And the contrast in that, I think, is amazing. It's made to withstand nuclear fallout. The actual tunnel goes into a mountain, of course, permafrost. So there's a constant cold temperature, and it's refrigerated also. So the actual rooms with the seeds are minus 18 degrees, and the rest is around 2 or 3 degrees. And here is also the entrance, in many ways mirroring the water just outside Longyearbyen. So I'll show just a few of these. This is the main chamber before the actual seed rooms, and they call this the cathedral. So I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of interviews with the scientists also, and filmed this. I mean, you don't get more nerds than this. So the point is placing seeds of biodiversity in these rooms. One of the rooms of 3 is already filled up. They have 1 million seeds of biodiversity already. And the chambers can hold in total 4.5 million. So this is really a backup in case, well, in case everything goes to hell, which hopefully it will not. I see a lot of hope, but the fact that we need this, I think, is an eye-opener. Here is one of the main chambers, which will be filled soon. And I really love these spaces in between the concrete and the man-made and this raw mountain. I haven't been that interested in the actual seed rooms, which is really the main point, but I didn't want to make it too much of a documentary. I have included some just for you to see though. So here is the main room. And you can't stay in there for a long time because just the heat from your body will change the temperature in the room. These boxes are sent from all over the world to the seed vault. They're very secure, and how do you say that? Plombert. They're secured. You can't open them in the transport either. And yeah, even North Korea decided to put their own seeds there. These are the only boxes out of many hundreds which are not plastic and sealed. The North Koreans wanted to make their own in wood, and they came unannounced with a boat, which is great. So we have backup for them as well. The countries who have deposited can take out their seeds anytime. And it's, I forgot to mention, this is a very international collaboration. So it's not just Norwegians doing this. I'm very thankful if you want to see more of my work on christianhouge.no, and I also have an Instagram account, which is called Christian Houge Artist. And that's really what I could share right now, I think, because we have some questions. I could talk all night and show you all lots of projects, but I think this will do for now.
Thank you, Christian. That was very comprehensive.
Thanks.
20 odd years of practice condensed into 30 minutes. Fantastic presentation. Much food for thought. There are quite a few questions and many comments that have come through. I think we will come to those questions and comments very shortly, but I'd like at this point to introduce Thale Fastvold into the conversation. If you'd like to reveal yourself, Thale. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yep, and you're also speaking to us from Oslo?
Yes, I'm here in Oslo at my studio.
Yep, good, good. Now you're a photographer, and I think you have featured in group exhibitions, one or two certainly with Christian before, but you're also the chair of, and excuse my pronunciation, Forbundet Frie Fotografer, which is the Norwegian Association of Fine Art Photographers, which has been fighting photography's corner as an artistic medium since 1974. It's a national association of photographers, which is an advocacy function to the organisation. And I'm sure you will say something about that shortly. But you also organise the Photo Book Festival in Oslo every year. So I guess in terms of context, maybe you could just tell us very briefly about that, and then maybe ask a question or two of Christian, if that is okay with you.
Yes, well, great, Malcolm. Thank you very much for having me here. And also thank you to Christian. It was interesting to see your presentation and learn a bit more about your praxis. So yeah, I'm here as elected chairwoman of Forbundet Frie Fotografer. And as Malcolm said, we are the organization for art photographers and camera-based artists in Norway. So we have members from all over Norway. And I mean, our main goal is to make art photography visible and to also work for artists' rights. Every year we have two main events, which is the annual spring exhibition, which is the juried art exhibitions of art photography and camera-based artists at Fotogalleriet. And we also have the Photo Book Festival Oslo, which Malcolm also mentioned, and that happens every year in September. So I guess you could also go and look at our webpage, Forbundet Frie Fotografer, to learn more about our organization. So Christian, we had this interesting conversation some days ago, just briefly, because we wanted to talk a bit before this event, where we were discussing dystopia, among other things. Yeah, so I mean, you are very interested in dystopia, and to me, that's artists specifically have been working with dystopia since the Industrial Revolution, and I mean, we can understand why. But to me, right now, it's like, yes, we are living in this time of many crises, but we as humans, we have also been living in this time for a long time now. Like if we kind of shift the perspective to all the indigenous peoples of the earth, they have, generally been living in a post-apocalypse time since, 500 years ago. So I'm just thinking that, now to me, I'm like, okay, why don't we try to dream of, radical futures? Like, could we focus on utopias instead of dystopias? So I'm wondering if you have something to talk about in that aspect.
Yes, I have. Utopia is fantastic. In what can be called environmental art, I think there's a lot of cliches that you can fall into, and I don't feel I'm focusing on dystopia, but I am focusing on the matters at hand in the Anthropocene, which really has changed so quickly, and I do want to create a dialogue. I do want to slap people in the face with some of this, in a beautiful way, but really get that dialogue going. And I try to find ways of reaching the audience in a personal way also. Of course, my process is just looking mostly of this in awe. I'm in awe of mankind also, and our progress. This progress is also fantastic, but it's to me it's also about looking at what's happening and well, taking that seriously, not just focusing on hope, but focusing on the matters at hand, and that we really need to ask new questions to be able to understand how we can move forwards from a line of thought when it comes to nature, which obviously is not working. We have to ask new questions, and I'm hoping that my projects can do that towards this utopia.
Yeah, I noticed that you use man and mankind a lot.
Human, yeah.
Yeah, not humankind.
Good.
I was wondering if that was like a point, because I'm coming from this point of ecofeminism, you know. So I noticed these things, and I also noticed that, you know, you say that you're inspired by Christo and Jean-Claude, who was the collaborator of Christo. I'm just thinking that maybe that's the thing that we need to do. We need to move a bit towards not so much man and nature, but also to see everything as nature, to see that we are all nature. It's not two different things, like humans and nature. We are all nature, and maybe we need to not protect nature. We need to respect and listen to nature.
I totally agree. Yeah, like I said earlier, when it comes to ego and this conquering of nature, which is a very kind of masculine way of thinking. It's also been very interesting mixing the NASA images, which has very much to do with something masculine, expensive, dangerous, conquering nature, against this very feminine, as I mentioned, of actually protecting and holding and nurturing this part of nature. When it comes to mankind and humankind, I totally agree. I have been using humankind in a lot of texts, and mankind is, I think I mentioned that because I'm a little bit nervous, but I totally agree, humankind, yes. And we are a part of this, this bigger whole. Humans are just a very small part of it. And I really do work to remind us of the humility that we should have when it comes to that which we are dependent upon, which is nature. Without that, you know, there's no foundation for anything.
So maybe we should also open up, because we heard that there were some other questions. So if Malcolm has...
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for questions there. Thank you also to your association for sharing the information about this talk this evening, because we do have quite a few people from Norway watching this evening. Just to mention a couple of them, just to give them a credit: Stig Marlin Weston, Frode Werner, Emma Marit Mikkelsen from Stavanger. But we also have people from the borders of Scotland, from Devon, from Newcastle, and from Glasgow as well. So we have something of an international audience there. So thank you again for sharing that information, because this is what these occasions are all about, is about sharing things much more widely in a way that we might not be able to do in person in the current period. But I will pull out a couple of questions here, of which there are a few, so just give me a second. Someone did ask Marjolaine in Newcastle, incredible work. How on earth do they put the tarpaulins on? That's a very practical question.
That is a great question, because they may look like simple sheets, but they're super, super heavy. And they all need to be stitched by hand. So you have people hanging off these large areas of glacier with safety harnesses and stitching all of this together. They're actually, I think they're flown in rolls by a helicopter, and the glaciologists are rolling them out, and they need to be cut somehow and stretched. So it's quite laborious work. And as I mentioned, they have to do this every year in summer to keep this going. Actually, this way of protecting ice, I mean, it's not just for protecting the visual. You know, ski resorts even in the Alps are in big trouble because the ice and snow is disappearing with a lot of jobs. So this project of TARP is used in both in Norway and in Italy, which I will also pursue.
Yeah,
yes.
It was fantastic to see the video, I have to say, because it does illustrate the scale, the enormity of these glaciers, which your work doesn't exactly convey when you see it on the wall, which is interesting because you're not really telling the whole story. You are leaving a lot up to the viewers themselves to make their own interpretation, which is very important in terms of the function of the art experience. Alan Sutherland asks, in the interior cave shots, did you rely entirely on natural light?
Yes.
You did.
It's all natural.
Good.
It's a visual, yeah, it's a visual trip just being in there. Very out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Paul Curry in the Borders asks, the references to bandages is so appropriate, covering the planet's wounds. How emotionally affected were you by being on the glacier face to face with the result of our inaction on global warming?
Well, I think each time I meet any glacier, this one and the rest of the Alps and in Norway, I do feel that I feel a sense of of being very, very small, very humble. I mean, these are ancient giants. A glacier is actually an organism in its own right. And they're moving the whole time, so you can hear sounds, you hear water rushing. And I've noticed this a lot with Svartisen. When you're standing next to it, it builds up tension, and then several times a day, it makes a push. So it can move several centimeters per day. And it's so massive, and it's such a awe-inspiring moment, which makes you just feel even more humble. So yeah, it's very personal for me to be with them, and of course, being reminded of this glacier melt all over the world. So I want to just stress this. According to glaciologists, all of our glaciers will be gone within 80 years, which is quite staggering. So one thing is the visual effects. The other is not with the glacier is not necessarily sea level rising, which is a huge threat from Greenland and Antarctica. But for example, another project that I've been looking at is the effects of climate migration. So if you look at just the Himalaya massive, which is melting a lot quicker than they were hoping, that's also melting at record speeds. So the Himalaya Massif is freshwater to at least 1.2 billion people. If you take a small part of that, let's say 400 million people who don't have fresh water for their crops or for living, that's quite, that's quite serious. And we need to respond to that quite quickly also, how to solve humanitarian crisis, not just a glacier being wiped away. I think it's interesting because the glaciers in Switzerland are used as to kind of take the temperature on the rest of the world's glaciers. So it is a very almost like Svalbard, where scientists from all over the world come to do research. Switzerland and the Alps is a very, very important reference to what's happening around the world.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Your comment, technology giveth and taketh away, sums up really early 21st century so well, according to Paul. Now, there are many comments in the Facebook feed, Christian, which I'm hoping that you'll be able to go back to. Many of them you've already kind of answered to some degree, but they are very reflective of the engagement that the audience has participated in this evening. But I think that's us kind of running out of time. So I think we might well bring it to a close now, if that doesn't feel too premature for you, Christian.
It's fine. I'd love to talk more, but it's been really nice speaking to you and being able to show some work. Thank you.
Yeah. It's just the beginning also in terms of us in the conversation, I should add, because it's not the end point here. So this will remain on Facebook live, so people can continue to comment. If you have the time in the next day or two, Christian, you can go back and answer any of those questions. I'd like to just remind people that there is a feature of several pages in the current issue of Catalogue Journal, and also an essay on the project itself. So do look it up, and I have to thank Jens Fries, who's the editor of Catalogue, for making the initial introduction to yourself, Christian. So thank you, Jens, for that. And as I say, there's more to be done in that regard. And similarly with yourself, Thale, thank you so much for your time and your enthusiasm and response to getting involved in all of this. So, and
the Norwegian Embassy.
And the Norwegian Embassy, of course, it goes without saying. Yes, absolutely. It's been absolutely fantastic to work with the Nordic embassies on this. Quite a unique project. The exhibition runs until the 27th of February. So another couple of weeks for people to catch it. So please do that if you can. If you can't visit, if you're somewhere else geographically difficult to get to Glasgow, you can have a 3D virtual walkthrough of the exhibition, and you can zoom in on Christian's work there as well. The other talks that have happened in this sequence of events are also on our YouTube channel, and that itself is something of a legacy of all of the artists' participation in that in this project, which we're very thankful for. So if Christian and Thale just want to stay on screen, we will say goodbye to the audience, and thank you everyone in Scotland, Manchester, England, everywhere else for joining, and Norway. We will see you again soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.